Hello everyone and welcome to the second video of the review series for the final exam. And in this occasion we will look at modals for permission, obligation, and prohibition. Now modal verbs are a special kind of verbs since they change the way we look at other verbs. But let's look at the notes. So how modals work? Modal verbs help change the form of other verbs so they can be used with other purposes, like expressing permission, obligation, or prohibition. Remember, this is an ordered word, and we have to follow certain rules. And sometimes we are granted permission for something, or maybe there are some prohibitions we have to face. So in order to express that, we use the modal verbs. With modal verbs, usual verbs get other inflections different from the usual inflections they have. That means the way we understand them changes. In the case of Spanish, we don't really have modal verbs. I think we have only two auxiliaries. But apart from that, we have specific inflections for every single situation. The verb changes according to the situation, but that's it. But in the case of English, since we don't have that many verbal forms, we have to use the modal verbs. The modal verbs for this unit are can and can't, must, mustn't, should, shouldn't, have to, don't have to. We are going to use both the affirmative and the negative form. But let's look at some examples. Students can't stay in the teacher's room. Workers must wear protective gear at all times. All personnel should report any anomalies. The articles have to be delivered on time. Notice that after the modal verb, the action verb remains in the base form. This is another characteristic of modal verbs. They don't really change with the tense you use. The only exception is have to, and I will explain that later. And they change the verb that follows them. For example, stay, wear, report, and be, but they don't change the physical form. That means in the simple present, for example, the verbs change with the subject. For example, I run, you run, she runs. There is a difference. But in the case of the modal verb, it doesn't really matter the subject as long as the modal verb is there, because it actually protects the verb and doesn't let any other agent to change the verb. So whenever you use modal verbs, the following verb will not change, will stay in the base form. I was telling you about the verb have to, the modal verb have to. Have to is not really a modal verb, but rather a verbal construction. But since this verbal construction, have to, tener que, reflects certain degree of obligation, that's the reason for its inclusion as a modal verb. And as such, it can change with the tenses. For example, I have to, she had to, and so on. But let's continue looking at this. Besides the modal verbs that show obligation, prohibition, and permission, we also have some phrases. For example, there are phrases that also reflect obligation and permission, like be allowed to and be supposed to. Be allowed to means having permission to do something. That means that something or someone allows you or allows people to do something. For example, we will look at some examples in a minute, sorry. Be supposed to means that ideally people have some obligation with something or someone, whether they fulfill that obligation or not. So be supposed to is a little bit special. Ideally, you have to do something, or you are supposed to do something. Ideally. Will you do it or not? That depends on you. But let's look at some examples to illustrate this. Okay, we have more examples. Unauthorized personnel is not allowed to walk around the workshop. Teachers are supposed to deliver the reports on time. Notice that the action verbs that follow the phrases are in the base form, whereas the phrases include the preposition to, hence forming an infinitive form. So again, the verbs don't really change. It's the same as in the previous examples. Now, both phrases begin with the verb be, so they can be conjugated in different ways. This is important to understand because you can refer to the different kinds of permission or obligations using the phrases be supposed to, be allowed to, but in different tenses. For example, the simple present. Teachers are supposed to deliver the reports on time. Or maybe in the simple past, the teacher was supposed to deliver the article on time. That's another example. Or, for example, when you refer to your childhood memories. When I was a kid, I was not allowed to speak during adult conversations, Well, I think that's it. Yes, that's it. I hope you find this video useful. It was very simple and short, but it's only to give you just another insight, kind of a refresh of the modals for permission, obligation, or prohibition topic. Remember, watch the video as many times as you wish. If you would like to do so, make any comments, and I'll be glad to read them and answer them. Well, see you in the next video. Bye.